Fabulous. Okay, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me. I suppose the first question is who are you and why are we here?
That's a great question. My name is Mollie Lappe. I wrote a musical and trying to get it launched into a wider audience. Um, yeah, I really have no idea what I'm doing. Just kind of stumbling through it.
Yeah, fabulous. So before obviously we get onto your show specifically, how did you get your start into musical theatre? How did you kind of catch the bug?
Well, I I did it all through school,
Hmm.
and I actually went to college to be a writer, a screenwriter. And then I dropped out to be in a punk band, which is what every parent wants their child to do. And then I got pregnant out of wedlock, and I had to be a nurse, which is like where I came from. Like I'm a nurse right now. But my sister also has done Broadway and like off Broadway stuff. So she kind of like had the connections to help me. Because when I was writing it, I wrote the book, the lyrics, the music, like basic piano, guitar, drums. And then I was like, "Ooh, this doesn't sound very good." I mean, it sounds okay, but it was like during COVID when all the Broadway people were off. And so I asked my sister because she went to Millikan University, which is like a fine arts college or whatever. I'm gonna stop doing that. That's so annoying. And she got me hooked up with Garrett Taylor, who plays piano for Wicked on Broadway,
Hmm.
and he ended up orchestrating the
Hmm.
musical for me.
Hmm. Amazing. So obviously Margie saves the world. How did that come to be? How did that start? Where did the idea come from?
Well, I was actually writing I've written a couple books,
Hmm.
and they're like high concept, like fantasy books, and I was just annoyed with myself because it just you have to make it so serious, and
Hmm.
you just take yourself so seriously, and it I was like, this is so cliche. Like I'm annoying myself writing this. And so I was watching Amy Schumer stand up. This is like back in the day, like 3 years ago. Or no, 5 years ago, because it took me 5 years to write this. And I was like, what if she showed up like in one of my scenes and was just like, this is so stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just I started writing a graphic novel or another book that was going to be like based on,
Hmm.
like this sarcastic girl who just so happens to be like in an end of the world scenario where there's like centaurs and vampires and werewolves and zombies. And she's like the only human that's just kind of like doesn't get it,
Mm.
you know? And so it was actually to take a break from the other stuff. And then I had an idea for this guy, this character, Stephen Dreamcatcher, who's like a really cliche, like 80s rock star. And I was like, what if I included a track? And then my friend who like produces musicals was like, why don't you just write a musical? And I was like, yeah, why don't I just write a musical? So then I did.
There's, I know obviously there's some overlap, but it's quite a big step going from obviously a graphic novel or book to a musical. So how did you find sort of
Yeah.
change in the direction of the story, the narrative?
I've always loved writing. I mean, I've written music a lot. I mean, I play a bunch of instruments and I've written music. I wrote music for the band that I was in. And it just kind of the songs just kind of like came
Hmm.
out, just the ridiculousness of it all. Like the whole musical is so like overly cliche.
Yeah,
It's about like not taking it yourself too
yeah.
seriously.
It's almost like you've flipped those cliches kind of totally upside down to make them their like own cliche. So usually it's this one person who's left who just so happens to have magical powers and can do all these crazy things. Whereas your story is
Yeah,
everyone else has all the special
right,
abilities, and Margie is literally just a normal girl. Um,
right.
yeah. So why was that character so important to keep that sort of normalness about her?
I tried so hard to every book that I read was like, you have to make your main character larger than life.
Hmm.
Like think Tevye, Fiddler on the Roof, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And I was like, but do I though? And then I was like, it doesn't really matter because nobody's gonna watch this. I'm just gonna produce it with a community theater and blah blah blah. But I think that makes her more endearing because I think a lot of times we can all relate
Yeah.
to feeling like everybody else has something
Yeah.
special and you're just kind of there.
Especially with like the sort of the social media generation stuff going on, is that you see all these fantastic things of other people, and you just think, oh, I don't have this, I can't do that, and you've kind of reclaiming that through this character, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think at the time too, like my sister was getting really successful, and I've had all these friends in theater, and I just felt like all their lives were taking off, and I'm like, I'm a nurse in Iowa. Everybody else is so special, and I'm just like here, just plugging away.
But obviously,
So I relate a lot to her.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
you don't like you've created this show, being this nurse from Idaho. You've created the show that is musical and is tapping into that sort of knowledge and connections that you said your sister had, while still
Mm,
it's kind of like a hybrid of you and your sister in a weird sort of way of musicals and
yeah,
the sort of, in your own words, the normal person, which is really interesting. Um, I saw online you have actually had a stage production of the show.
yeah.
Yeah, how did that go?
Hmm.
How was the experience of that?
It was as good as it could be because
Hmm.
it was like a regional theater, like a community theater, and there was a lot of high schoolers, but I had coached them because I coach high school theater on the side. And they really stepped up. I mean, obviously, I when I was recording this soundtrack, I have a couple people from Broadway. I have some recordings of them singing the songs, but
Hmm.
I didn't want to put those out there because I felt bad for the cast.
Right.
So, I mean, it was pretty well received for
Hmm.
like a small town, but there's obviously like limitations of what you
Yeah.
can and can't do and the vocal limitations of,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, of your cast and the people
yeah.
you have available. Obviously, I also have experience in doing musicals, but all the musicals I've done I've helped direct, have been sort of established shows. Your Beauty and the Beast, your Jesus Christ Superstar, all these big shows.
Uh,
How was it
yeah.
taking a brand new musical to a group of young people? How was that? How was
It
that?
was really well, I just so happened to be on the board of the theater. And um, I directed Fiddler on the Roof a couple of years ago, and then I helped direct Beauty and the Beast, which was just like a monster of a show, you know. And and they were like, everyone was really tired, and they're like, "What should we do this summer?" And I'm like, "Well, I wrote a musical." And they're like, "Do you want to direct it?" And I was like, "Sure." And they're like, "Okay, great, there we go. Go ahead." And then I didn't, and then I choreographed it because we don't.
Yeah, totally. How did the kids sort of react to having a brand new piece of theatre there's never been put on stage before? How did they find that sort of invention process, if you will?
I think they really liked it. I mean, from what they said to me, it was fun to be able to do whatever you want with a brand new character and
Hmm.
not have to look at all the other people that have done it. And they kind of really dug into the script to find like
Hmm.
what is my character, what is their motivation, what is their background, who am I friends with, what's my motive for the whole show.
Yeah, fantastic. Sounds really interesting. And obviously, from that, then going on from we've got and that you've got the recording available on music sites. Sort of, how was the recording process? How was putting an album together? How did that go?
It was very interesting because
Hmm.
I had a guitar player lined up because it's a hard guitar part,
Hmm.
and they dropped out the night before opening night. They're like, it's too hard, and I was like, oh.
Thanks for the notice. Yeah.
So then I played it, but like the really hard parts, I played like on a keyboard
Hmm.
that had like a guitar. Got ugh. Anywho, so the songs that sound live are from the live recording, and the songs that are overly reverbed are are like in this little office that I just used like Logic Pro, and then I had some just record like your like a microphone, a little. what do they call it? The little wind thing that
Oh, right, yeah, yeah. I can't remember the name either.
stops your P's and T's from coming out,
Mm.
and just had a room full of kids like huddled together, ready to sing their little hearts out.
So it was the same cast on the recording as it is was the live show.
Hmm.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, there's a couple on the YouTube channel. Uh, there's a couple recordings from my sister. She sings alone, and Lynn Craig um, sings "Love Is Like the Sun" because I guess I'm an asshole, and I don't know if I can say that or not.
It's fine.
I guess I'm a jerk because my sister Kira, who's like a mezzo, was like, I like this song, but you have us belting into the stratosphere. And I'm like, it's one song. It's one song. You can do it.
Oh, so you obviously you've
And
had
then,
stage. Oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No, no, no. Is there something else you'd like to say about that? I was going to move on.
Oh, and coaching these high schoolers who have just like sang choir and like they've done some musical theater to belt into those higher registers was
Hmm.
really interesting, but it was also really nice. It was cool to see them blossom and realize like, oh, I can do this. I can belt Elphaba if I want to.
Hmm. Was the plan always then to record the album with the same cast, or was that an idea that came about as the show went on, or how did that come to be?
I knew I wanted to record it. I knew I had to get a cast recording, and if I was going to try to pay, and then
Hmm.
Broadway started to come back,
Right.
so I wasn't going to be able to get those people anymore. Um, so not for the price that I was getting them for. But I knew that I wanted a cast recording, and this was the opportunity, and they had already learned it, and it's good enough for now, I
Yeah.
guess.
The kids must have really liked that sort of thing of, we talked about putting on shows and you put your show on, you do 3, 4, 5 days, then it's over. The kids must have really
Yeah,
enjoyed having an album, whether it be digital or physical, that they have contributed to that will kind of never really go away. So that's
right.
fantastic. So you've
Thank
had
you.
the stage production, you've had the recording. Sort of what's next? What's the big dream? Where would you like to see it? What can you tease?
Well, I'd love to see it on the West End someday.
Yes, of course.
I'd love to see it on Broadway someday, but probably the next step is so my sister is now in LA. I know I totally rely on her, but she is in LA now, and I'm like such a mooch, just riding her coattails. Um, but I've played piano. I played accompaniment for her for years. Um, but she lives in LA, and her and one of her friends, who's a producer, are going to do a cabaret of the show and see if they can get some people on board to do it in some regional theaters in California to hopefully help get. I
Yeah.
mean, and I have to I'm about done putting all the orchestra books together. So then I'm going to be doing that really annoying thing where you send out like a promo email to any regional theater like across the US. You can do my show for free. I have the performance tracks. Please pick me.
Well, I suppose that's the sort of, sadly, those are the trials of doing a new show. We've talked about the exciting part of, getting into character and making your stamp on the show that has not been done before. But then equally, you have to do the groveling, to put it in a really negative word, but you have
Mhm.
to do the please pick me, please do this, can you please? So I suppose it
Mhm.
is, they're both doing established shows and new shows have their own merits and downfalls. What would
Yeah.
be your piece of advice then for new musical creatives, trying to get their start into writing and creating musicals?
I would say follow the rules and do your research, but don't feel like you have to follow the rules. And if you're not having fun, at least 70% of the time, it's not worth it.
Yeah, fabulous. Right, so where can people stay up to date with yourself and the show?
We're on Facebook and Instagram as Margie Saves the World. And also our website is www.margiesavestheworld.com.
And also, if you type into Spotify, Margie Saves the World, it does come up,
Mhm.
and you can have a listen there, which is where I've discovered the show from. But
Thank you.
yes, so final question, then I suppose, is why should people come see Margie Save? Why should people be excited about Margie Saves the World?
Because it's a feel-good comedy about the end of the world. And I think we're so kind of bombarded with so
Mhm.
much tragedy and dramatics and all this doom and gloom. And yes, it can be that, but I think Margie Saves the World, what I hope comes across is that there is always hope and there's always
Hmm.
that little spark that will keep you going.
Hmm.
And there is always goodness in the world to find. And a joke.
And it's,
I
it's
was going to say something. I was going to say something really inappropriate, but
you said it was really interesting at the beginning. You said that obviously the show started in lockdown, which was kind of its own apocalypse, its own end of the world scenario for
yeah,
many, and the show
yeah,
has continued through. And now you've talked about how the whole point of the story is that even in the apocalypse, there is still hope and fun things to enjoy. So the kind of the show has had its own journey of its own story, if that in a weird sort
yeah,
of yeah, right.
yeah,
Um, so we'll end on that. So I want to end as I began, just by thanking you for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I will
yeah.
put
Thank you so much.
no problem at all. I will put the links into the description so people can just scroll down and click away. Obviously, best of luck with the show. I can't wait to hear all the fabulous things that the places it goes and people it reaches. But yeah, thank you very much, and speak to you
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you so much.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.